I love you.
I love you too.
I want to stay here with you.
You know, you're already here. I'm staying with you.
Do you want to stay and play in the gardens of LaLa?
As long as I can have zinnias.
Zinnias!
As long as I can have abundant zinnias. Zinnias love it here.
Yeah, they really do. And flowers make my mother very happy. And
flowers are my flowers and books are kind of yeah. That's me.
Mm-hmm. So let's read the poetry we brought together.
Speaking of zinnias.
Speaking of zinnias.
Yes. I have here a poem that a friend copied and sent to me because I had taken her bouquets of zinnias all summer. And this is a poem by a woman named Grace Paley. On occasion, I forget the names of my friends and the names of the flowers in my garden. My friends remind me, Grace, it's us. The flowers just stand stunned by the sun. A long time ago, my mother said, darling, there are also wildflowers, but look, these I planted. My flowers are pink and red and orange. They're sturdy. They make new petals every day to fill the fat, round faces. Suddenly, before I thought, I called out, Zinnia, Zinnia, Zinnia. Along came a sunny summer breeze. They swayed, lightly bowed. I said, Mother. I love that poem. Every day. I read it every day.
It's beautiful. So I'm going to share the first poem I wrote as an adult in class. I wrote this in class. And I wrote it about a memory that I had while in the house, my grandmother's house. And we were going through old family photos, trying to identify them. And my daughter was just beginning to walk. So she was, using surfaces to get around. So this is that. Hundreds. Here my great grandfather stands beside Carl, the surrogate son, for lack of another, who is also my grandmother, Carol. They are smiling or squinting in the sun. The blue of their eyes does not absorb the light, but casts it out. The brightest white of the picture. My great-grandfather's name was James Percy. It was also Santiago, out of respect. Queen Kitty's joined us for the poetry reading. Grandmother, mother, I, all daughters and mothers now. My daughter, hand over hand, passes our knees, her guiding posts, amazed by her own shuffling feet, sacking stacks of photos before her with gleeful shrieks while a calloused hand guides her gently to unfamiliar knees. Hundreds. Here's one of me walking for the first time on a dirt path leading from the old house in tiny moccasined feet, tired perhaps of the goat heads that stick in my palm, which I offer up tearfully to be plucked. I am small and delicate, wearing a dark dress to contrast my paleness. A faint birthmark on my forehead between my eyes tells me God had to push my head down into my mother's womb. I didn't want to come quite yet. Here's my mother, walking for the first time in the exact same place. She is darker, moon-faced, radiant. Here's another in which she beats a drum half her size. Pursed-lipped and wide-eyed, she reveals no foresight that she will smooth the bed of my river with her laughter, that she will for a time be her mother's keeper. The clock confirms the shadow of the cottonwood as it stretches magnificently over the courtyard. My grandmother is drumming the arm of her chair softly with her fist, trying to recall the identity of a woman standing self-possessed on a boulder above the river.
Beautiful.
So
just beautiful.
Grandma used to do this thing where she would tap, she would tap the sides of the chair, like she would do this kind of a little bit nervously, and on herself too. And so we kind of, have picked up genetically
yeah,
the same
Busy hands.
Busy hands.
All the time. Yes.
So I guess what we're trying to sort of illustrate here is that this is important, you know, like my mother took care of my grandmother to her passing. I have no intention, no one's going anywhere. She's here putting up with me. I'm here trying to get her to put up with me. And it's not necessarily been easy. But what do you think is behind it? That you know, why have we decided to live our lives this way?
Well, I mean, that's probably a long story, but I spent my working life being a floral designer, because anything floral is very important to me. And well, my mother was widowed, and she was alone on her big piece of property. And at the same time, I was way over California big flower shops, and decided to come home back to New Mexico. And again, with no past and personal past in farming, I decided to grow flowers for farmers market or for flower shops. And without really thinking it through, I was moving from California to New Mexico that actually has seasons. There's a long period of time when you're not going to be growing flowers to sell flower shops.
Snowing.
And for, you know, in Buda, Rinconada, the little community, little village where the place was the nearest place to sell flower shops was Taos, which is not a big flower town anyway. And then an hour away from Santa Fe or Los Alamos. And then and it was impractical. But in the middle of that, I heard about farmers market. Mother told me about a friend who had gone to farmers markets. She said, "Why don't you try it?" And I tried it, and oh man, the first time there, I sold out immediately and came home with cash in hand. And it was in Santa Fe, which is a great place to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to market, do the market, close down at noon, and then go have lunch in Santa Fe at one of their many fine restaurants, and then home. Yeah. And it was just, so I did it for 15 years. I did the farmers market for 15 years, and watched it grow and change in huge ways.
It's a fabulous farmers market.
It's just incredible.
Rivals Seattle. I mean, it's not Seattle, so it can never be Seattle.
No.
But for being in a harsh climate, it's one of the more cohesive, community-driven markets. At least at the time, there was just a unique gathering of souls that were really doing the work of creating markets that were based on what farmers grow, and really supportive of just about anyone who wanted to do this kind of, small gardening and supporting it in the economy. So I came to the market too with like some canned goods, and ended up, making my living that way and raising my children, my daughter, and sometimes some stepchildren, helping with the market life. And I followed my husband here to Colorado, and my mom followed by selling her the piece of Eden that she had, and we invested in this acre with full intention to grow flowers. We were going to do market flowers again, and I had tried to transition my canning business here, but it was so based on the farmers market that it was and I was just ready to let it go. It had gotten to a size I wanted something a little more. I don't know. The flowers were very appealing.
Right.
So that was 2004 or so that we bought this place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting history since 2004 that has really brought us along an interesting journey that involves cannabis cultivation. And that was, sort of an interesting industry to get involved with, being in such close proximity, because we both were coming at it from very different places. And it really did kind of define a lot of our experiences here.
Mm.
And she wasn't necessarily a fan.
Yes, I have to admit. Yes, this is true.
And it's kind of like one of those difficult discussions that, we need to have with each other about how we support these grassroots kinds of, but alternative kinds of economies. And I would consider cannabis to have been something of an alternative.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a screaming, yelling, "Oh my God, it's terrible, they're evil." It was more fear of something that could lead to trouble.
Yeah.
On your part.
It did.
Yeah, it did.
It did.
Yeah, I mean, that was primarily, that was the biggest part of it was, I mean, risking everything because, particularly before it became legal, it was.
Oh, I was growing while it was legal. I was a caregiver.
Oh, that's right. You did the caregiver. Yes. Right.
So
okay, good.
But the perceptions of it.
Yes.
And I did come out of it with a felony, and I did come out of it having gotten, robbed and all kinds of life experiences later that there's not time to be shared here. But what happened to that initial 100 by 100 garden spot that we tilled, which I've learned so much since. And, we went ahead and put the garden in before we got accepted for the farmers markets here locally. And we ran into what happened? What happened there, Mom? What's your?
Oh, goodness. The farmers market here was, it was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
We were not having grown up in the Santa Fe Farmers Market, which was a very small, very few vendors in essence.
In the
beginning for me,
but not
to a massive, huge market with just but it was all done very cooperatively and very openly and welcoming.
Very welcoming community.
Very little backbiting. Envy, jealousy, whatever.
And very
it was
little
really
censorship.
Easy.
Like there wasn't any sort of like, we basically were competing with one other flower vendor, and so we weren't allowed into any of our local markets, basically. And the one market we could do locally was one that wasn't structured very well, so it literally was there were just so many issues with the markets.
Yeah, the issue with the Fort Collins, the area markets was very. It was obvious that we were resented right away. People were not friendly. They were not welcoming. It was difficult. Although we did at one point later on, we did do a year.
No, it was that year
of Laramie.
Yeah, we did. We did Laramie. We did Edwards. We did Cheyenne.
She would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and drive
Denver,
all the way over
Longmont.
to Edwards and do the market. It was insane. But it was kick butt good.
It was a good market.
It was great.
But we basically burned out that first year and decided we weren't going to be participating in markets because it just was too much to be driving the state. And and we kind of were reminiscent for the kind of culture that we had in New Mexico. So that's when cannabis became a very lucrative option for me. And I also, in the midst of that, was getting a divorce. And then I had a couple of cycles of relationships with and so with some folks, with some men with some addiction challenges.
Inappropriate relationships.
In the midst of this cannabis growing that I was doing. And so my mom went off during that period of time and started a tea shop in Taos, which I think was her dream come true in a lot of ways.
It was my dream come true and a nightmare in a way, but boy, it was amazing. Yes.
Yeah, it really was
a delight.
So she got to go off and do these dream things and then come back and return. So there's been many goings and comings here. And, but ultimately, through all of this transitioning, I went away, got my permaculture certification, came back, did a 20-day juice cleanse, did all kinds of healing, did all kinds of sort of like, came into a lot of sort of downloads about how perhaps it's time for us to start thinking about structuring our properties differently so that there's a possibility for legacy and for whatever work that is being done on these kinds of properties to continue on for not just, you know, carved up as this property in New Mexico was eventually that led to here, but just, you know, that the land itself is protected, that the things that are coming to exist in the properties that we maintain and steward, that those movements and successions are protected through time so that they can come into their own design over time. And that what's, you know, the relationship between the land and the stewards is something that is kind of come into agreement over time. So we're looking towards alternative structuring for LaLa Gardens and maybe taking it out of ownership and putting it into a trust or some kind of a shared ownership so that we can continue having zinnias and and letting some natural succession take place through different tools that we've both come to embrace. So including natural farming and permaculture. So just to capture stuff online, are there other things you want to talk about, or like how do you feel about what's happening with this house and this property? Like what?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm 80 years old now, and I'm sort of retreating. I mean, I'm not going senile, I don't think. Am I?
I don't think so. Not yet.
But I'm just sort of retreating a bit. And I mean, I don't have great long forward thoughts anymore. But it's but of course I want you to be able to keep going, and your ideas and your ideals are certainly valid and need to happen, you know, for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when people come over and they come to LaLa Gardens, they don't want to leave. And they're always like, they come at it with surprise, like, I don't know what it is, but I just don't want to leave. And I think the reason that happens is because of the type of stewarding that's gone on to just have a respect for the succession that's happening here. You know, we came in tilling, and then, you know, after my permaculture training, we did a lot of waffling. We did a lot of these techniques that have been sort of suggested through these modern sort of trying to bring back indigenous ways of managing our food systems, right? And so there's been a history here since 2004 of applying permaculture style, like land, water management, and soil building. But with time and through practice and through observation and being present for the changes, that being involved here is what's sort of informed me about what's going on in our world. Like, I've learned about the universe just by being here and being in reflective observation of what's going on outside. And, we are in clay soils, and it's probably the hardest gardening we've ever done.
Yeah, the soil is very difficult.
It's really difficult. So
she's really, and she's been really important in building up some really good soil on this place.
It's true.
For sure.
There has been some soil building going on around here. Yeah. And but it's interesting because it was a bacterial dominant, just because of the types of the types of techniques I was using. And so I was able to really learn about what that means. What does it mean when you have bacterial dominant soils? It means you can grow a lot of lettuce and broccoli and that sort of thing. But when it comes to other things, they're a bit more challenging. And so I needed to up my skills in the farming department. So I got trained in natural farming because it's as close to sort of a non-disruptive indigenous teaching that I could get, to. And through coming into awareness, learning, and then practicing these indigenous teachings has really taught me what succession looks like, what it is, and how important it is that we stay in one place over a period of time to allow for some of the healings that are occurring here. That it's not so much about ideologies or like finding the perfect place on the planet. Very often we just need to stay put and like be attentive to where we are and do the work that's before us. And then we come into this beautiful understanding that our medicine is where we are, that the work that we're doing is where we are, and that doing it over and over and over again with each season kind of brings us into a very like profound relationship.
And it takes time. It just takes time. Nothing is quick and easy. Which is what I think the chemical companies want us to believe, that you just throw some chemicals on and everything's going to be perfect. That clay soil is going to loosen up and open up and let the roots grow. And guess what? That isn't real.
It just doesn't happen.
You're right. So, and it takes time. Microbes are shy little creatures. They want time to develop.
They really do, and they're communal in nature, and community takes time to build as well. So, in natural farming, the first year you fail, and the second year you come at it with renewed vigor and some lessons learned, and you do it again, and there's a lot of ways that you fail. The third year you come at it again, and your mom comes home and she's so excited about it, and you put into place all these applications and you practice it, and you basically fail.
Except for the zinnias and the cantaloupes and the tobacco.
Yeah.
Zinnias, cantaloupes, and tobacco.
It was a zinnia, tobacco, and cantaloupe
last summer.
Yeah.
It was a zinnia tobacco cantaloupe
and every year there's something different. Like we've had tomato years, we've had squash years, we've had, so it's really important to have a diversity in your gardens, because with these disruptions that we're experiencing, we have to create diverse ecosystems, because not everything is going to do well year after year after year, and it's often a big surprise. So
yeah, I remember the year I came back from Taos, you had, because that was in August, I believe, you had a zucchini plant, the likes of which I had never seen, literally never seen in my life. It was unbelievable. Since then, zucchini sits there going,
I know.
it's like, no.
Yeah, not this year.
Nope.
No,
Nope.
not this
So
year.
yeah, and then we've never ever since then have had one like that one was. That was, oh my goodness, that was a zucchini. I happen to love zucchini, so it was fine with me. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel, like it's just, we all want, just coming to sort of trying to build community, having a vision about what I want to do towards alternative economy, and all these movements towards understanding indigenous teachings that will bring us back to nature, because nature is our mother. We are creatures. We are part of creation, and the way we access that force is through our observation and interaction with the natural world. So we can think of these plans all day long, but until we put them into practice, that's when we really start on the path of, regenerative systems. And, it'd be great to be in Hawaii. It would be great to be in Costa Rica. It would be great to be in some of these equatorial places. But I feel like even with all the climate changes and disruptions, that we have to stay where we are and really come to a deep appreciation that what we need is literally in front of us. And I've never gotten closer to understanding that than through natural farming, because it's a system of farming that truly does teach you that everything you need is right there, right before you, and is free and accessible. And so that's the platform that I feel like LaLa Gardens is going to be sort of bringing forth, is that, like, just coming into its own balance and resonating off of that balance year after year, that this place has the potential to just become like a little Garden of Eden, right outside of town in an urban area. We have 4 goats and 2 Muscovy hens, and I'm sure there'll be more animals coming.
And the cat.
And the cat. There's a queen of LaLa.
Yes.
Kitty is the queen of LaLa.
Yes.
And so the animal inputs are very much a part of it. We're demonstrating regenerative lifestyle. So the goats get walked every day. The ducks are actually inside the house right now. They're hanging out on a rail, like,
Because
surveying the
14
inside of the
below
house.
was way
It was,
too much
we
for them.
just,
Yes.
so we're sort of discovering and creating systems as we go that sort of support this intercommunication that happens between animals and plants over many seasons, plants as they establish themselves and domestic and sort of like come into a wild balance on the property. And then the animals that we use their manure and their grazing to manage the diversity in the direction that we want to go. Because I learned from Peter Bain, my permaculture teacher, that you basically are going to grow the things that you want to consume. The things that nourish you and your family are the things that you grow, and that you can create a garden that feeds generations to come and becomes a source of sustenance for people after you leave the garden. So
Yes.
Can I grow some zinnias for you?
No, I'll grow zinnias.
You grow
I'll grow
zinnias?
zinnias for you.
Okay, cool. I'll grow some cantaloupe or something.
There you go. Right. And yeah, we got to try zucchini again.
Yeah, we got.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some seeds.
And
They're
delicata.
over there.
And
There's a bunch of
delicata.
seeds over there. Yeah, delicata.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Shall we share some?
And
of-
tomatoes.
Oh, we always do tomatoes over here. And we're
At
gonna have
one
a
point in time, a
greenhouse
few
this
years
next
ago, I
summer.
planted 75 tomato plants. And then
we still have sauce from
harvested.
that year. We still have sauce from that year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Our cupboards are full.
Yes.
The pantry is full.
Yes.
We have dried things, pickled things.
Yes.
We have all kinds of things that have.
Yep.
We have kimchi that's now 4 years old and still delicious.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She ferments. Great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great way to preserve your harvest without refrigeration. So,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of what we do here is very experimental towards just how to bring regeneration into our everyday lives, you know.
Yeah.
So do you want to share should we share some of our things that we love? Some of our favorite books?
Okay. Go ahead.
So we're going to share some of our favorite, we brought some things that we just enjoy in life, and some of our favorite little trinkets and things. This is a book that, an interview I did with Ray Yoon, who's a very, very special natural farmer who lives he's South Korean, but he lives in Vancouver. And this is a very important book, Farmers of 40 Centuries. And so a lot of what I'm learning in here are some amazing things. They're just easy to put into practice. Very free technology. You don't need to buy anything off the shelf. Do it all yourself. This is The Wild Wisdom of Weeds. Katrina Blair. She lives in Colorado. But she speaks the wisdom of the weeds. And a lot of what happens at LaLa Gardens is we let our plants naturalize. And so some of them are weeds, but sometimes our wild plants are our most nutritious medicines. And so she has a garden and a restaurant in Colorado and is doing very much the same work that I'm doing. So I feel I've met her. I plan on having an interview at some point, but she's got this great guide for all the edible weeds that you can use. And Mom, what's some of yours?
Oh, I just brought a few books because I use the library avidly, so I don't have a lot of books. But this is a lovely
book of delights.
It's just a gentleman who took a year to write down little essays of small things and big things that gave him delight each day. And there's not 100% every day. He gaps some days, but it's just delightful. He's adorable. And this I loved. And I don't like dystopian literature because I'm a Pollyanna, so I can't help myself. But this was really wonderful.
I haven't actually read it yet.
Oh my goodness. It's really
We're supposed
lovely.
to read this together and I haven't read it yet.
It's her ideas. Her basic premise is everything changes. And I've been saying that for years. Like people who whine and complain about something like things going on now. Tech. I don't love tech at all. I'm terrible about tech. But I keep trying to tell people, things change. They just do. Everything changes. And that whole book is founded on everything that actually changes God, and God is change. And it's really, really interesting.
Nice. And she carries seeds, right? So what's her relationship to seeds?
You'll just have to read the book.
I'm just going to have to read the book.
You're going to have to read the book.
Okay. Never mind.
And this is only this is indicative of my recreational reading. I'm addicted to foreign mysteries. I love them. And it's such a great way to find out about politics and personal attitudes and things and bureaucracy in all different parts of the world. And it brings me pleasure. I like it. I like how they solve mysteries. So that's that. And this I put out just because a dear friend who's now passed away in Dixon, New Mexico made it. And it's the kind of thing I love. It's garden stuff. I just love it. It's a tile.
Happy garden.
Yep. It's just a tile. And I've had it for years and I always have it.
Who made this?
In my outdoor planting somehow. Yeah. It's really delightful. You had him.
And this was given to me as a present in a house. I was living with my daughter in a house in Taos. It was my first garden. And it was a beautiful garden. Remember that little garden, that house on the hill, and it was like that little raised bed that I made outside?
Yes, it was great. I loved everything about that house. It was really sweet.
And I tended at the time to put and to establish gardens and then to leave them. And leave them like at the peak of harvest. I have an issue with harvesting. It's like an issue.
Oh yeah, she does.
It's like I have a problem. Like I grow the plants and I can't harvest them. But at least I'm not leaving anymore. And we're trying not to leave this garden. Like I really want to see many more harvests. And the gentleman that owned the house lived in the front part of the house. And he kind of knew me in a weird way. Like he knew my ways. He knew my traveling ways. And he gave this to me. And he said, you know, let this be a little bit of a protector through your life. And sometimes it's felt really heavy to have this around because, I mean, he's got his head in his hands and he's all curled up on himself. Right. And he's just, you know, what is this? What does this mean? And to me, he's like a warrior, and he's holding the weight of the world, but he's also curled in on a circle. So it's like, it's this kind of like, it's become like a seed, like this, for all the struggles and for all the edges and the conflicts that we've gone through to get where we are now, that this has created a seed, and that the best outcome for this is for this to be planted in fertile soil that we've built, and to have it root itself, and to have it, you know, emerge as a plant that's a beneficial medicine for all of us. So
wow. Nice.
No,
that's great.
So I brought that.
I didn't know the history of it.
Yeah.
I didn't recall that.
He used to chuckle at me, and I was like, why are you chuckling? Just stop chuckling.
I chuckle at a lot of things. I chuckle a lot.
And this, I don't know, this is Magnus Nilsson. He's that's famous, kind of famous chef, I guess, Fatherkin. And this is an amazing, amazing cookbook that really explores bringing the wild and the forest and the aged animals, the older animals, the goats that have lived their lives for 13 years, the dairy cow that is beloved, that's a menu I put together for Collins. So this kind of approach to, all right. So we were talking about, so yesterday in the permaculture pod, we were going into some discussion about the four eyes of oppression. And a lot of, I think what we're challenged to do in this age is to really put our eyes on, you know, how on the different ways we're either a part of the oppression, or we're self-oppressing, or we're, you know, we're involving ourselves within the systems of oppression that are existent. I mean, we're losing our natural resources. We're losing our planet Earth. She's not happy with us right now, and coming into a different kind of relationship with our mother.
Yeah.
And honoring the mother, and honoring the nurturing aspects of the mother, and also healing the parts that have been disrupted. But there was a lot of, so, and you know, we have to sort of leave a culture of extraction and come into sort of a culture of reciprocity. And reciprocity can occur over time and space in a garden atmosphere. Reciprocity can come between a mother and a daughter. Reciprocity can come in the kinds of systems that we build. And when we as humans are a part of creation and we're a part of nature, and when we run into trouble, it has everything to do with a have-to relationship with nature. Like, we have to extract something from her that we don't have already. So if we can change that kind of extractive behavior to more of a reciprocity, where if I take an apple, a harvest of apples from the apple tree, then I'm going to need to give back to that apple tree in order to have a harvest the next year. And so there becomes this relationship of reciprocity. And that's how our garden spaces come into abundance, is through this active and very conscious reciprocity and balancing act, which natural farming has just been a really beautiful avenue of that. So that also there's a kind of an understanding that anything to do with a pyramid shape does not express reciprocity, that things have to be in a circular shape, that's more of a natural shape. So
It's interesting.
yeah, anywhere there is a pyramid, there's no reciprocity,
Of course.
right? There's no relationship. There's always got to be a top.
Yeah.
Where are you in relationship? So it's always a power struggle. So cosmological dualism is what is created there, and so there's always going to be an othering, a you and a me dualistically. And so we've got to sort of take responsibilities for the stories that we're telling ourselves and our progeny about nature. And so coming into harmony with these natural systems is really, really important. And coming into a relationship is based on proximity to the land. And so we, in our garden spaces and where we're growing our food, is where we get to come into those kind of reciprocity relationships. And so it's important to preserve things that are actively in that state of reciprocity. But this woman, when we're not in that relationship of reciprocity, that we tend to be involved with self-annihilation. And so, we expect our systems to fail. And so we give things up a lot to acquire something new. It's wasteful, like giving something up, throwing something away to get something new. And that's a process of self-annihilation. So a lot of what's going to reverse that trend is just to simply stay where you are and simply do the work that's before you, and come into a relationship with your land, and come into a relationship with your people, with your neighbors and with your families, and do the hard work, and tell your mom that you love her. I love you.
I love you, daughter.
And just do the work. But there was an interesting spell that we got to practice yesterday. And so what we, because we're all working through our shadows, and we're all figuring out how to come into these balanced relationships. And so to empower ourselves, and with women, a lot of the times we can be extremely dismissive of one another and very critical of one another, because we're hearing those voices of oppression, perhaps through a harsh parent, in our own minds, coming out of our mouths for each other. And, as women, we haven't really been taught we can be very dismissive and very hurtful with one another. And I feel like that really needs to be healed. And so we all bring certain shadow aspects that need to be seen and recognized and transformed. And So this is the spell. First you say, I claim the power of my blank. So for instance, I claim the power of my emotionalism. Let's say, because I can tend to be emotional. Or
Yes.
I claim the power of my emotionalism. The next part of the spell is I embrace. So I claim the power of my emotionalism. I embrace that at times it makes me retreat. And then the next thing is a statement which transforms the whole thing. So I claim the power of my emotionalism. I embrace my tendency to retreat. I can be relied on to feel the depth of the feeling that is going to be required for me to heal. So,
Wow. Okay.
okay, so, all right, so I want you to find a shadow aspect of yourself.
Okay.
Let's create a spell.
I'm not going to say it out loud.
She's not going to say it out loud.
No, it's got to be in my head.
Okay. Well,
Because-
I challenge everyone out there
but I need to deal with
Yeah.
it. But
to engage in this healing process where you claim what you're feeling, you claim what's going on, you claim that aspect that makes other people uncomfortable, you uncomfortable, whatever, and then you embrace some aspect of it, and then and then restore it, and take accountability, and let it speak volumes for the gift that you're given in your life, in your place and time, whether you've got a container garden, whether you've got a small garden, whether you've got an indoor garden, whether you've got an acre, whatever it is. Let's take the step to step into our gardens and to be accountable for how we involve ourselves in the succession that brings our forests back to us, and our food back to us, and our communities back to us, and our families back to us, and our sanity back to us.
Yep. I like that exercise.
You do?
It just for me it needs to be internal.
Yeah.
But I like it. It's a good one.
Yeah, because otherwise we get caught up in it. We're so
Right.
dismissive, not only of each other, but of ourselves. And really, it's just time
And
to
then-
stand in our truth.
and at 80 years old, it's like, well, this is just who I am. This is how I am. Well, I happen to believe you can change because everything changes.
Everything changes, except LaLa Gardens. Let's let
No,
her be
it
a
does
garden.
too change.
She changes,
No.
but let's let her continue with
Look
the
at
change.
what
and the
happened
change.
last year
I
with
know
this little garden out front here. Oh my
We had
God, it
such
was a joy.
we had such
And there
a
wasn't a zinnia in
discovery.
it.
No, but
There were
belladonna.
miraculous, miraculous hollyhocks.
Oh, the
I've never
hollyhocks
ever
couldn't
seen
stop.
hollyhocks bloom first year like they did here. They
And it
were
was full on application of
incredible.
natural farming technology.
Totally, 100%.
Just
She built this-
really gorgeous
beautiful.
things to share about what we're doing here, and how to transform clay into just being a source of food for the plants, and
It was
as a result
truly
for us.
miraculous.
It was truly miraculous.
Yes.
So in
Yes.
celebration of that and of our garden and of our life
Our
together,
relationship. Yeah.
may it continue.
Yes.
May we continue to have a place for our plants to live.
Yes. Our jungle.
Our jungle.
Our indoor jungle. Yes.
Creating our atmosphere, protecting our biome by her own.
Yes.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we do good?
Yeah, I think that's
just sit there and do that. No,
No, good to go.
we have to go.
Moving forward.
We have to do this. Why are we here? That's the question.
For 80 years.
But it's better to be here at LaLa Garden
Yeah.
than just about anywhere on the planet right now.
Yes.
Why?
Because this is where we are.
Because this is where we are.